have the whole video filmed already. I don't know how to start this. Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm June, and today we're going to be going back into the wonderful and mysterious Tricky House for another lore video. Yay! You've read the title, you know what's up. But yeah, I know it's been a while since I've come here. I am sorry, I'm not really. But yeah, today it's a lore video, which is very exciting. It's a bit of a long one, and I do apologize for that. I tried to make it as short as possible, but I yap a lot and I have a lot of thoughts. So 45 minutes video it is. Anyways, if you've read the video, you know what's up. Today we're going to be analyzing the House of Tricky #1 video that Xikers dropped like 3 months ago. And yeah, I know I'm late. I actually started recording this 3 months ago, so that's gonna be there's a few parts of this. I am sorry. But procrastination got me, Karl. It is what it is. Anyways, this video is going to be structured in 2 parts. The first part is gonna be like the visual analysis in a sense. It's not exactly, but it's basically the analysis that you can do like in a vacuum, like only relating it to the Xikers lore and referencing Xikers lore that we have seen already, right? The things that you can actually like see in that video without actually having to know any external outputs, right? And the second part, it's gonna be referential analysis in a sense, you know? It's not in a vacuum anymore. We're gonna be analyzing it, trying to search for different references and from different places, right, that Xikers, or I guess KQ in this case, might have drawn inspiration from, right? So that's kind of how this is going to work today. And let me stop yapping because this is already long enough. So let's start and let's go to the first part. So the video starts with Tricky sending a message to somebody in the frame, in the door frame. And even though we as an audience are seeing this, I wouldn't say that this specific message is aimed at us. Yes, we would be some sort of like the target demographic of this because like of the lore implications, but I would say that this specifically is targeting Xikers. Tricky is talking to Xikers and it's asking them who they are. I would say Tricky is talking to Minze specifically. Why, you ask? Well, in this whole video they are all wearing the uniforms and the outfits that they were wearing in Rockstar. Here there's a little chart that I made. You can find it on Twitter. I probably link it down below with all of the people who I would say each of the characters in the video represents, just based on the Rockstar videos. And in this case, the main character of this whole video has Minje's clothes, so I would say that it is Minje. So, Tricky basically starts throughout the video telling them about, you know, themes that we already have seen in this lore, about, you know, who themselves, like who are you inside. Tricky just tells them they might be outcasts, they might not fit in, but you know, that's what makes them special, that's what makes them unique, and that they are different and they are not like the others, and they are being pushed away by the others. It's the reason that they eventually end up with Tricky and in the Tricky house. Now, this whole bit, it's kind of creepy to me, in my humble opinion, because like Tricky's just essentially saying that there's no escaping it. That if you're an outcast, if you're a weirdo or like outside the norm individual, you will eventually end up with Tricky. Like there's no escaping, like there's no choice. You don't get a choice for that. And that, I think, it's kind of scary and kind of creepy. Because even though the message in general is kind of some sort of like hope, in the sense that it's you will find your place with me, you will find your place with all of the other outcasts in the Tricky House and with me. It also sounds slightly menacing, just by the way Tricky phrases things, and how, again, it kind of feels more imposing than like embracing, you know what I'm saying? So I don't really trust Tricky, and these things keep just not making me trust it in the slightest. But regardless, moving on. In this video, it's basically set inside the Tricky House, or at least what we might think that it's inside the Tricky House. Because first and foremost, we are shown the Tricky House by Minje's eyes, and it just basically looks the exact same as the one that we have seen in Bittersweet before. And like right after that frame, we see Xikers in the middle of like a corridor that is strange, and it does look very much like the Witch corridor where Jujun and Hyano are in the Witch music video. So yeah, in general, I feel like they are inside the Tricky House, and they get like teleported inside the Tricky House. Now, the thing is, when I see this entire video and what I gather from this is that this is not happening in real life. They are not physically inside the Tricky House just yet. This is a dream, and this is like the first contact that they actually have with Tricky and the Tricky House. Now, if you remember from last video and from the Xikers lore, if you haven't seen the last video, you should probably go check it out, because that might actually make things more clear here. But last video we discussed that Xikers were approached by Tricky through their dreams first and foremost. Tricky appeared in their dreams and told them to go find it and go find the Tricky House, right? But you know, once they are basically resigned and of never getting coordinates and just getting used to it, they start having dreams that repeat the exact same phrase all over and over again. Do you want to know your coordinates? If you want to meet it after waking up, visit Tricky House. After having these dreams, one by one the members decide to go find Tricky, and once they're all together, their eyes are open to these new, different possibilities. Well, I really think that this is the first approach, the first encounter, if you will, and this is the first that dream where Tricky approaches them. And you would be like, why would you think that? Well, first and foremost, because it's it kind of, all of the sequence that happens, especially the last bit, it could very much be just trippy magic from the Tricky House that would completely be normal, but that also, like, it feels like a dream sequence to me. But apart from that, and most importantly, in the end of the video, Tricky asks them, specifically Minje, to go find it and to go find the Tricky House. So, if they were already inside the Tricky House, why the hell would they need to find it, right? That's why I think in the first few seconds, we get a glimpse of the actual Tricky House. So Xikers know where to find it. Now, we don't actually know if Xikers knew each other before finding themselves in the Tricky House and before kind of the Rockstar music video and all that. In the neighbor article and description from Dorval Ringen, it says that one by one the members decided to go find the Tricky House, so I would assume that they don't know each other beforehand, but they might. We never know. But what I do think is that this video, and that this dream, I would say, each of them had it individually, just replacing what we see about Minze with other members. It might be the exact same video, it might be slightly different. I would assume that Tricky might play into Xikers' own like weaknesses and desires to make them join the Tricky House. So maybe each person might have like a slightly different dream where Tricky appeals to different sides of each other. But we specifically had Minje's. Why did we have Minje? I don't know. Maybe because he is the leader. That might be the case. Maybe because in other music videos he is like the most feral, especially in like Bittersweet and kind of like Witch. He's the one who has like the most weird powers, and he literally turns into a monster at some point. So he's like very unhinged, and in his lyrics as well. Even though in his lyrics, I never know how much to take from them, because you know they're self-written in the end. So he might just say whatever the hell he wants. It might not be actually relevant to the story in certain ways. You know what I'm saying? But you know, his lyrics usually are very you know, unhinged. Let's call them unhinged. He in general in the videos he kind of seems the most troubled. So it might be because of that. It might just be because he's just the leader and they decided to go with that. We will see. Until we get like their backstories and stuff. If we get their backstories, we might not know. But either way, I think each member had its own version of the dream. Anyways, now in the video we follow Xikers around what I would think is a tricky house, and they pretty much take a very similar route that the ones that we see in Witch, with the original, well, with the first corridor being very similar to the one where Jojo and Hyano are. Then you get into the staircase and the black and white and red bit that looks very similar to the closet in Witch, where coincidentally is the place where they find Karl Lagerfeld. And if you didn't know this, because you might not know, in last comeback we got a little bit of an anagram in the Red Sun set in the performance video, where it's spelled Karl Lagerfeld. I don't know how to say that name. I'm so sorry. But so it was very surprising to see that we were right for that and that he appeared in this video. So yeah, but we will talk about that a little bit later. But I would say I'm gonna call it for now Karl's closet. This bit here, and they appear there. Then they also look like they're in the middle of a maze, like the one in Witch. And they also end up running in like a checkered floors, which might be also an allusion to Witch, but we have seen checkers and we have seen like a chess imagery in the entirety of their lore, basically, especially for tricking, like the tricky secrets and all that. This is a very heavy imagery, and this is like basically the aesthetic of those videos. We just follow them around the tricky house until eventually they all split whilst following Tricky. I would say that this is where the dream splits, and each of them have like their own private or like special moment thing, right? I guess like the group bits, everybody would probably have them around the same time. We don't know. This is all speculation again. Don't come at me. This is all theories. Now then Minze and that ends up separating, and we see him falling through something that looks fairly similar to things like Alice in Wonderland and the rabbit hole. We will talk about that later as well when we tackle Karl Lagerfeld, but we will get there in a bit. Now, we do see him fall, and we do see him struggle for a bit until he finds his younger self, and his younger self pretty much gives him a tangerine, and then Tricky asks him to go find the tricky house, pretty much. Now, circling back to the Rockstar music video, I would say that this dream or video or whatever it is essentially happens like right before Rockstar, and it's kind of it's pretty much the way that Tricky gives them the key to be able to enter the tricky house. How, you may ask? I think that it might be through the blue flames. The blue flames are the key to the tricky house. Now, we know that the blue flames are like Dokkaebi flames, but in other cultures, Dokkaebi flames in this case are called Will-o'-the-Wisp. We call them Fuegos Fatuos, and they are essentially these magical things that guide travelers to safer areas, right? So I would say that the blue flames pretty much are there to kind of guide Xikers to the tricky house and help them like find their powers. And you will be like, okay, cool, but why? So in Rockstar, we see them kind of struggle for a bit and see all the weird eyes, and they're kind of like, in the beginning they look like kind of torn, and most of them look kind of lost in the beginning until they find this little blue light, and they just decide to follow them, right? In some, like in one way or another, either the blue flame or the blue eyes manifest around all of them, and they essentially like start like following those bits. Now, the blue light guides them around the entire dream, starting on top of the doorframe, and it ends up in Minch's heart, just like in the Rockstar music video. So, in my head, the Dokkaebi lights are the key to the tricky house. And in Rockstar, they're starting to accept these powers, or, you know, accept that they might want to join the tricky house, and that they might want to actually go and find it. And they essentially, especially through the lyrics, you can see that they pretty much accept what makes them different, also makes them unique, and makes them special. And I guess that realization of you're not a failure, you're not an outcast, you're just different, kind of like opens the doors to find the tricky house. It's like their acceptance of themselves pretty much helps them through this journey, and that's when they like take the leap of faith, to call it something, when they just all of them are running in the and end up jumping. That's where the blue flames appear in their hearts. That's where they have finally accepted who they are, and that's why they're ready to go find the tricky house. Now we see that the blue flames create portals, which is great for me because I didn't understand that mechanic of how they teleported that well, but now we can kind of see that it's the blue lights, especially if you go and look at the maze of choice that they did from at the beginning of which, for like the promotion and stuff, you have like blue portals and gray portals, and I guess the blue portals are made by Dokkaebi flames, which is very great, and also explains why they like the tornadoes in both Rockstar and Bittersweet happened. The tornadoes are essentially portals that they're making, and just brings them into different places, because it really, those tornadoes kind of do look a little bit like flames, especially the insides of the tornado, like the floor of it. It kind of does look like flames, especially in like the Rockstar music video. So that is very interesting, because that might be the way that they are able to teleport, is because of those like blue flames, which is very, very sick to know, honestly. So essentially, to summarize, I would say that this video is basically the dream that Tricky shows Xikers to ask them to find the tricky house and to find it, and to, you know, believe in themselves. And it's kind of an invitation for them to join the tricky house. It happens through the flames. The flames are kind of like the embodiment of them accepting themselves. And once they accept themselves, the blue flames are like the clear manifestation of that. They accept themselves, and they kind of accept like their uniqueness, and that gives them the power to be able to, you know, join the tricky house and get in there and all that, right? And yeah, that's like the physical representation of that. And I would say that, yeah, Tricky is kind of manipulating them in a way, I would also add, because that is just creepy. Because if you actually like look at the lyrics before that, and in a lot of like, especially in Doorbell Ringing, but also in like Bittersweet and things like that, whenever they talk about the tricky house, they talk about it in like two different ways, kind of like this is a magical and amazing place and blah 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 and whatnot. But most of them, it's kind of, there's no way to get out of the tricky house. There's no exit, no turn back. There, you cannot escape. You are forever trapped here. So get out of there before it's too late. Don't even bother coming in. So that is not very encouraging in the slightest, especially as you like, you can kind of see the shift through their lyrics and through their albums. In the early albums, it's like they're like fearless. They don't care. They're happy about it. They're kind of blissfully unaware. Who cares about tomorrow? We don't have to worry right now. That is for later. No worries. Thank you. But once you get in, especially for Red Sun and then for Bittersweet, they're like, oh, holy shit, what the hell did we get into? And I think that is very telling of the way that, you know, Tricky might not be what it seems, especially because, well, the language that Tricky uses, it's kind of like a little bit deceiving and a little bit again intense and kind of worrying. It's very ominous. And I would like to add that this is kind of, I know it might not like be important in the slightest, but I just want to like say it. This is the very first time that we have seen Xikers interact with Tricky in a black hood. So like in every other video that we have, like the run video, the meet Tricky, the any other video that would see Xikers with Tricky is always in the white hood. This is kind of the very first time that we have seen Xikers interact with Tricky in a black hood. Does this have any relevance? I don't know. Maybe not. It is interesting to note that in the Tricky's secret video, Tricky is also portrayed in a black cloak when it is being very whimsy and very evil, pretty much, and kind of creepy. But it's also shown in like kind of the black and the white, because it's like a balance of good and evil and of chaos and control or whatever and whatnot. So I would say that, you know, Tricky has different sides and all that, but this is just, again, more theories that maybe won't go anywhere. I just wanted to like note that. But yeah, this is basically what I've gathered from just watching the video and not knowing like extra bits, like what the hell is Karl Lagerfeld doing there, or what do the actual things like, because there's a lot of like art in this, right? But we're gonna discuss that in the next segment. Okay, so now that we are done analyzing all of the visuals and all that things of the video, now we can get into the fun part, which is analyzing the imagery and the deeper meanings, which is real fun, because that's where all of the references come in, and that's when we get to theorize and do more stuff. Anyways, so as I've mentioned earlier, this video seems to have like a lot of referential imagery. As you know, all of these animated videos in Xikers tend to do like The Trick is Secret. It also has a lot of like references, but in this case, I would say that it has a lot of like Alice in Wonderland references inside of it, from the floating in that limbo, just like in the animated movie, to quite literally falling down the rabbit hole through that portal thing, right? Now, KQ does have a history with using Alice in Wonderland in their concepts and like references in Alice in Wonderland, like for example, literally Wonderland by ATs. It's not strange to me at all that KQ has decided to like pull some like either references on base Xikers lore a little bit in like Wonderland and certain things like that. I think that is very on brand for them. In this case, I do think that the Tricky House is kind of like a Wonderland of its own, right? Where everybody's a misfit, everybody's a little bit crazy, but it is a place where, you know, nothing makes sense, and it can't be dangerous if you're not careful. You know, you might end up getting your head chopped off. Now, Xikers, just like Alice, do go in head first and delving into like the Trick House the same way she dwells into like Wonderland. They do get into this like wonderful world full of like whimsy and not caring about any of the consequences. But soon they do find that there's more underneath that like amazing surface that can be like quite dangerous, really, as we can see very much in like their tonal shift through their lyrics, that it comes like from wow, it is a wonderful and amazing Tricky House where there is no exit, but that is fine. Why would you want to escape here. It might be dangerous, but it's also fun. And who cares about the consequences? That is for tomorrow. And you know, to these newer releases, they basically go like with their lyrics. Like for example, in Mid Sun, there is no escape. Better take a look around this place, or you know, you should better run. They're basically like, oh shit, this might be actually more dangerous than we thought, and we cannot really get out of here. You better run whilst you can, and it's time to wake up. Red sun, the sun is coming up, it is time to go. Which, you know, tie into these lyrics of waking up. That is notoriously how Alice leaves Wonderland both times that she's in Wonderland, through waking up, right? In both of the books, she comes back to the real world by waking up. Now, whether they're saying wake up boy to wake up and get out of the tricky house, or they're saying it to like the Valors and the people with coordinates, so they can like wake up from this control that they have from Namu and all that things, and actually live their own lives, that is unknown for now. It is kind of hard to know like what are they referring with lyrics in a lot of places, because they can be like alluding to so many different things. I don't really know, but I think we will have to see. But I digress. Going back to the Alice in Wonderland thing. Right now, I think that, at least how I see it, I think Xikers are being lured into the rabbit hole by Tricky, you know. They're following Tricky in their dreams, running behind the white rabbit through this place full of just unopened doors, where you can only see through the peephole what's on the other side. This is very interesting to me, especially like the white rabbit bit, because in Xikers, a lot of like their imagery, there's a lot of like rabbit references from like Jujun's bunny hat in Trial and Error. In Trial and Error, also in Red Sun, Minze also references a bunny Toki in his own lyrics. But the thing is, for that, a little parenthesis, I don't know if we can like very much completely take that on account, because it is a self-written lyrics after all. So I never know how much like are they in on the lore, and how much do they reference their own lore, or they just like write whatever they want within the parts that they want to do, or whatever, you know what I mean. Like, we never know for sure in the rappers bits how much I can like actually like, analyze and reference that, but I digress. Not only there, but you know, in general, there's a lot of like constant rabbit imagery in their styling, from like watch out, there's a lot of like imagery of rabbits in like a lot of the outfits. Also in how to play, there's also a few rabbit outfits and things like that. And even all the way back in the first like Tricky House episode, they are divided into groups, the black or the white rabbits, which might be a Korean thing, I don't know, but I think it's kind of interesting to point out how much a bunny and a rabbit is being mentioned in their group. Now, also with a bunch of like imagery in Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, the second book after Alice in Wonderland. That whole book is centered around that she's a pawn that has to go on this quest to become a queen, and ends up defeating the Red Queen, which is the one that kind of orchestrated all of this. And this is like, it's very interesting considering the trial and error chess concept, when everybody's just not only like dressed up like in black and white and all that, they literally have like chess pieces with them, right? And also Tricky literally using humans as its own chess pieces in the Tricky Secret. The constant checkers motifs in every video in general, like especially in the animated videos, but also in which there's a lot of like checkered everywhere. Now, there was a theory at some point that Xikers might be chess pieces that are being played by Tricky to achieve its ulterior motives, right? Where, you know, it gave children abilities beyond what they could bear. It fostered reckless courage to make them self-destruct as heroes, you know, and all that. But we're not going to be delving into that as of right now, because that is from another video. Anyways, this story, very much just like Alice's, it's one of like acceptance of the self, of not just caring if people truly think you're mad, because, you know, we're all a little bit crazy here, we're all a bit mad, but that's fine because we're living authentically. And I think that's like what Xikers and their story is mostly about, for you to be able to live authentically and not care about what other people think, right? and it's like the reinforcement of the self and all of the different facets that make you yourself, and how you, even if you don't like certain parts of you, you have to be able to like accept them and live with them. Especially you can see it in a lot of like in the imagery of the video, for example, with a lot of the cubism in the video, where this art style kind of like reflects different facets of the same person but in the same frame. That is kind of like a very important metaphor of like accepting all of your parts, even the ones that you might like or might you not like. Now, to talk about this, my friend Han over on Twitter, she made a really 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 interesting thread about this and about all of the artistic imagery and the self portrayed in this video, and we're going to be talking about it. I will link the thread in the description. Please go read it in full, because I'm not going to be discussing it absolutely in full, but we're going to be talking about a little bit of what she talks in there, because I think it's super interesting and she explained it so well that I can't rewrite it in a single way. We're just going to be reading the thread, okay? Because it's so good. Okay, anyways, now Han basically bases her thread on Carl Jung model of like the psyche, and I quote, I'm gonna start basically reading right now. I have it on my tablet. Now, the model says that our ego constructs an ideal self to present to the world called the persona, and disowns the part that of ourselves that are unacceptable, which forms the shadow. According to the LA Times, the shadow is everything we don't want to be. It's something that we think that we are not. Oh, I'm not like that. Well, actually, we are like that. We just don't have a conscious relationship with those parts of ourselves. The shadow is where we stuff all things, positive and negative, that the ego deems unacceptable or socially damaging for us to be. When confronted with traits in our shadows, we often engage in projection. This is a defense mechanism in which the ego denies the existence of negative and disowned traits, parts of self, and instead identifies them in others. I'm not scared, you're scared. Now, this concept is very interesting, especially as we were talking before about the blue lights and the acceptance of self. Han here says that, for example, a tricky does represent the shadow self. Tricky is a chaotic, confusing, fickle, and mysteriously powerful being that exists within us without any reason, purpose, or rules. Tricky, essentially, as in Han is trying to say, and I interpret as well, it's like the key for Xikers to see all of the different parts of themselves. It represents all the parts that they think that they're not, and all the things that society and in this world, like, they don't have coordinates. That's like the one capital sin, and that's what you would repress and what you wouldn't want to be, right? Tricky kind of represents all of that, and not only represents all the bad things that come with not having coordinates and being different from the others, but it also represents all the power and all the good things that can come with accepting yourselves. As we have said before, the shadow consists of the good and the bad things that you don't want to like think about, or that are relegated in the back of your mind that you not necessarily see about yourself just yet, because you're like pushing them aside. Now, cubism, as we have said, it can be like a metaphor for the facets of self. I quote, cubism is a way to like dissect something from multiple sides at once. This fits the metaphor of delving into the shadow self perfectly. Suddenly, the hidden sides of self are able to be seen. When the young boy hands the member an orange, suddenly they're connected to their diverse facets, as we can see in the montage of widely varying portrayals of them. Now, it is interesting to note that right when tiny child gives bigger child the orange or the tangerine or whatever the hell this is, from being like all traces and a lot of like different textures, it becomes smooth and round, and that's when we are like shown all the different art styles, right? Which is kind of a moment where, in this case Minja, but I guess the members accept themselves, and they start seeing all of the different facets of themselves and all of the things that they are and they maybe don't want to be, but they are there anyways. And there's certain things that you just don't want to be at all, but they are still there and they're a part of you, right? And to be able to like get rid of them or at least live with them, you have to acknowledge them first, right? I think this is the moment of acknowledging their strengths but also their flaws and their mistakes. Now we can get into the cool part of the actual visual analysis. Now Han starts talking about like all the visual representations and what things can mean of all the different portraits here, right? For example, number one, the presence of multiple human figures, pieces of figures. This reinforces the idea that the self is and should be multifaceted. Now, two, the presence of sinister figures. Once again, the shadow self contains good and bad parts that we alienate, could also imply the interference of Tricky's power. That honestly, the Tricky bit is extremely interesting to me because that is true how it's gonna be interesting to see as we move forward how the influence of Tricky it's gonna shape Xikers' character and you know morals and motives as we keep going, right? 3. The obscuring of the face. This screams to me The Son of Man by Magritte. His quote: "Everything we see hides another thing. We always want to see what's hidden by what we see. There is an interest in that which is hidden and which the visible does not show us. In the same way that we want to see the face hidden behind the apple, I think this video suggests that we have a desire to see the parts of ourselves that hide behind our public personas. In the lore, maybe that's the potential squashed by the predetermined life paths." Now, that is when like all of the different like ninjas in the different ways and shapes come together, and that's where we see finally Minje in the void with the blue flame. And as we have talked about before, what I interpret the blue flames is the acceptance of self and the key to open like all the potential and you know actually be able to access their powers, and in this case the key to the Tricky House, and you know that's a sort of thing. So once he acknowledges all of the different parts of himself and in some way maybe starts accepting who he is as a whole, that's when it manifests in the form of the flame. Now this is basically the analysis of the art bit of the video. I really urge you to go and read Han's thread because it's super interesting, and thank you so much Han for letting me talk about it and use it here. But yeah, it was like super interesting, and it was very helpful for the point that I wanted to make, as well as like a very good analysis in my opinion. There's still one more thing that I have alluded to before that we still haven't talked about, and that is our Mr. Dude guy, Karl Lagerfeld. You may be thinking here like, who is this man? Why is he here? Why were you this surprised that he is here, and what the hell does this white-haired dude have to do with Xikers lore? So Karl Lagerfeld was a German fashion designer who's mostly known for his work at the fashion house Chanel. Worked in a lot of different fashion houses, as well as having his own named after himself, clearly. And if you, and maybe like from recent years, if you're not super into fashion, but you still might know this, he was the theme for the Met Gala like 2 years ago when everybody was dressed in black and white and in tweed, and Doja Cat dressed as a cat because this man loves his cat for some fucking reason. Look, this man is super weird, okay? And not necessarily in the good way. I don't know why the hell did they decide to pick him. I guess he's not the greatest dude ever. Let's be fully honest here. Apart from, you know, being an old guy, he died a few years ago. So yeah, he was a fashion designer. So the usual sexist, fatphobic, xenophobic, also a liar for some reason, but that's like more on like quirky side of him. He just didn't want people to know his like real birth year for some reason. He just lied about that. I don't know. He was a strange man. But you know, credit where it's due. He is a very prolific and very talented designer. I really, apparently, his work has inspired my outfits a lot, even without me knowing. So like, he's a very good and important designer, which also seems to be a pretty big inspiration for like witch outfits, at least in like fabrics and things like that. But we will talk about it a little bit later because, yeah, I have some thoughts on that. Now, the very first instance we have of Lagerfeld, at least name appearing in the Xikers lore, was when Red Sun teasers dropped, and in that teaser we can see this background, right, with a lot of like words, and in a anagram type thing we can see Karl Lagerfeld written there, as well as Xikers and Red Sun, which, imagine our surprise when we were actually right, and he appeared in this video like half a year later. Like that was wild, dude. You may be wondering, like, why is he in the Alice in Wonderland and references bit? The very first person who related Lagerfeld to Alice in Wonderland in the Xikers context was my friend Mari over on Twitter. I will link her original thread in the description, but she was the very first person to point out that Karl was somehow involved with Alice in Wonderland. He was part of a photo shoot that they did in like 2003. A bunch of designers based off of like Alice in Wonderland, and each designer posed with the model that was representing Alice with their own design, and each of them like made a different design. In this collection there was like several different designers that they could have chosen with. Why Karl Lagerfeld in particular, right? Well, I'm not sure, honestly. I don't really know. Maybe it's because they liked their his designs and his aesthetic. I guess we will have to wait and see. As to why is he in the Tricky House though, I do have some theories. It's more than theories, things that I want to point out, but you know, I have some thoughts about this. So, we know this guy is a designer. Yes? Yes. And in the video, he's actually like making clothes. Now, we can assume that he either like lives in the Tricky House, or at least he has control over a realm of the Tricky House. What I basically called Karl's closet before. In this place, in the Witch music video, we can see some of the outfits that Xikers have worn over the course of other music videos. We can see the We Don't Stop ones and things like that, and you would say that it's like just a little fun Easter egg, right? If it wasn't for the fact that upon entering the Tricky House in which the first thing that happens to Jimin is that he gets his clothes changed by an unknown spirit thing, from the bittersweet outfits to this more like sober, serious suit, right? That is very devoid of like the color and the edginess of the bittersweet outfits, and it doesn't just yet have the unique of the other suits in the music video, the ones that are like black and white and red, and they're like all patchwork and stuff, right? These can be used to reflect like how society traps them on this path devoid of color, like with no choice. Because if we can see the animated videos and like the Welcome to the Tricky House and Meet Tricky and all of those, every time that we see the Valors and all the houses around them and all the things, they're all gray. Everything is very gray and just muted. No, there's not much color when the Tricky House is very like bright, and all of the Xikers clothes are usually very bright and very colorful. So it might be a way to express that specific thing that we're, you know, no choice, no color, this world that is just, you don't get a choice to do anything. It could also maybe be used to express how the Tricky House is also a dangerous place, and that it might not be as free of a place that it looks like. They apparently don't have a choice upon entering the Tricky House on even what they wear, and in the entire video they're being basically manhandled by invisible things, right? Which, you know, very interesting if you take into account the description of the album in Naver, I believe it is, or where, you know, they say Xikers are going through the tree house and dancing with invisible things. Yeah, dancing my ass. They're being dragged around the floor. What the fuck do you mean dancing? Anyways, maybe they're referring to this, maybe they're referring to the Valor thing, maybe they're referring to a secret third thing that we don't fucking know about, because I don't know anymore. With this band I'm going insane. What I'm trying to say here is that it seems like once they step a foot into the trick house, the house itself decides what they wear. And to have clothes to be put on different people, they need a designer and a seamster that can make them, right? Hence, that's where our boy Karl comes in. Plus, in the Red Sun lyrics, they do say the freaks runway, which, runway can mean a variety of things, but it's usually, mostly associated with fashion, right? It might be like a display of like the freaks, like it's a fashion show, all nicely dressed by, our head designer here. But, once again, all tribulations, all my thoughts and whatnots, right? For now, I'm sure that we'll get a bigger explanation in the future as to why this man is here and why they choose him specifically and whatnot. But I do genuinely find it like super interesting how they put like emphasis in clothing, especially because it is such an important piece of self-expression, being able to like choose what you wear and how you present to the world. So having a designer in their lore and giving like importance to like the change of clothes and like the ability, or I guess the lack of ability, of choosing how you present, I think it's like very important, very interesting. It gets their point across very well in my opinion. I think it's like it really resonates with me in a way, because self-expression is extremely important. But yeah, that's are basically my thoughts. All of these are theories. Once again, there's not much to it other than that. I just have a lot of fun analyzing things like this. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be getting into those album analysis because they are literally sitting there on my laptop, and I still haven't done it because I don't know why. I might do the doorbell ringing one next, even though I'm gonna have probably soon, fingers crossed, if I can make myself do it, like a very short video comparing some things that I found out recently and I find very interesting. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Once again, thank you so much to Han and to Marie for their threads. I'll link them down in the description. Please go check them out and give them lots of love. Click that like button if you enjoyed it. Comment your thoughts on this. Subscribe for more of this. I don't know. The stream Xikers, stan Xikers. Xikers are going on tour in America very soon. So if you live near any of the places where they're going, you should check them out. I've seen them live twice. They're extremely good. Genuinely, if you can, you maybe should go and see them. Yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble about some random ass lore, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.